Duan Da withdrew in frantic haste, yet Ling Han pressed forward with equal urgency. The distance between them never widened, as though they were lovers entwined in inseparable devotion. Yet Duan Da felt no trace of romance, only a crawling chill, like needles piercing his skin. How could this youth's movement be so swift? He clung like a shadow at high noon, impossible to shake off, sending waves of cold dread through his limbs. He was no mere spiritual ocean cultivator, but a flower blossom tier expert. Moreover, one who had already reached the high stage, nearing the great perfection of that realm. But therein lay the absurdity. Even a peak flower blossom tier warrior should not possess such ferocity. He himself stood at the peak of the spiritual infant tier. With but a single finger, he could slaughter a flower blossom tier cultivator hundreds of times over. So why was he the one forced into repeated retreat? Ling Han did not merely pursue at close quarters. Fists whirling, he struck again and again with ruthless force. Ping, ping, ping! One fist followed another like a furious tidal surge, driving Duan Da to block desperately while craning his head aside during his backward steps, narrowly evading direct impact. One retreated, one advanced. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged over 100 moves. This, all around, jaws fell open. So it turned out, Ling Han himself was a monstrous existence. Earlier, who knew had slain an early-stage spiritual infant tier opponent with a single punch. Though Ling Han's display was less visually shocking, his adversary was at the very peak of the spiritual infant tier. Now that Ling Han had revealed his cultivation, all could clearly sense the aura of the late-stage flower blossom tier emanating from him. And like Duan Da, they could not comprehend it. He should not have been this terrifying. Recalling Hu Niu's astonishing performance before, they finally grasped the meaning of the word freak. Those who could battle beyond their tier, even beyond an entire great realm, truly too freakishly terrifying. Only Qin Lianyu had already harbored such suspicions. She was less stunned than the others, yet her beautiful eyes were still wide with shock. Compared to these two, could someone like her still dare to call herself a prodigy? No, she was still a prodigy. But Hu Niu and Ling Han had long surpassed the level of prodigy and stepped into the realm of aberrant monsters. Ah! Duan Da roared furiously. Hong! A purple mist surged from his body, rising like ghostly vapor about to engulf Ling Han entirely. In that instant, Ling Han did not understand its nature, and naturally would not allow it to close in. His figure flickered, and he had already withdrawn over 3 meters, his gaze icy as he locked onto his opponent. The peak stage of the spiritual infant tier amounts to nothing more than this, he said calmly. With thunderclap, ninth heaven coordinating with devil fairy step, his speed had already reached the level of the deity transformation tier, and was even more nimble and elusive. Duan Da howled in fury. He wiped his face with his hand, and when he saw his palm stained red with blood, his rage intensified. Though none of Ling Han's earlier blows had landed squarely, the mere brush of their momentum had sliced open his face. "This old man's handsome face," he cried, flustered and enraged. Ling Han grinned in delight. "Could it be that you still use that old face to pick up girls? Tsk. I must admire your courage. Those aunties who would be charmed by that ancient visage, you still dare to lay hands on them. Is this your way of gifting warmth to the lonely matrons? Impudent junior, this old man will suppress and kill you." Duan Da charged forward once more. This time, he unfurled a long brocade. It appeared woven of silk, yet far grander in scale, its surface covered in vivid depictions of men and women entangled in amorous combat. As it billowed in the wind, the figures upon it seemed to stir, writhing and battling fiercely. This was no illusion. Even decadent moans drifted through the air, unsettling the heart and clouding the mind. A spirit tool, and as expected of the Wind Moon sect, even their spirit tools were obscene and wicked, using lewd imagery to shake one's will. "Kill!" Duan Mingji roared. "Shoo! Shoo! Shoo!" From within the brocade burst forth resplendent rays that shot toward Ling Han. At the same time, Duan Da himself rushed forward, unleashing his terrifying aura and fully displaying the might of a peak-stage, spiritual infant tier expert. Ling Han laughed loudly. If his opponent had been the small Saber King, he would not yet be a match. After all, while he could fight beyond his realm, the small Saber King could do the same. Even if Ling Han surpassed more levels, he could not bridge the gulf of an entire great tier. But Duan Mingda was different. Though at the spiritual infant tier, his battle prowess was only around 10 stars, Ling Han had no fear of him. Activating Thunderclap, Ninth Heaven, he transformed into a streak of lightning and in an instant appeared before Duan Mingda, both fists crashing down once more. Boy, don't you dare! Duan Mingda once again raised the purple mist, attempting to envelop Ling Han. This was the Wind Moon Sect's secret legacy art. Against outsiders, it bewitched the mind, igniting lust and scattering reason. For disciples of the Winter Moon Sect, however, it served as a tonic, stimulating spirit and sharpening clarity. Ling Han sealed every pore of his body with origin power. This time, he did not retreat, but advanced head-on. Pang! 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 The two clashed fiercely. The brocade spirit tool proved highly troublesome, continuously firing rays to bombard Ling Han. It too had reached the late stage of the spiritual infant tier and could not be underestimated. Since Ling Han's true cultivation was only at the flower blossom tier, he had to evade its attacks. With the assistance of this spirit tool, Duan Mingda barely managed to fight Ling Han to a standstill. The onlookers were stunned speechless. Ling Han was currently unarmed. If he were to unleash a spirit tool of his own, would he not immediately gain the upper hand? Too terrifying. How could such a domineering flower blossom tier elite exist? Cho Zifei and the other four turned deathly pale. If the Wind Moon Sect prevailed, they would undoubtedly be doomed. Yet if Ling Han emerged victorious, would he spare them after they had earlier tried to force him into death? Death to the left, death to the right, then why remain here? They edged backward, intending to slip away. As for Restore Heaven Academy, they would simply enroll next year. Hang. Where do you think you're going? Hu Nu stood with hands on her hips, an ominous glint blazing in her eyes. Ken Yi held his long saber horizontally, killing intent surging like a storm tide. If it had been only Ken Yi, the five might have charged together, but with Hu Nu added to the equation, they immediately abandoned the thought. Cho Zifei forced a strained smile. Kenya, what do you mean by this? Since all pretense had already fallen away, Kenya spread his hands calmly and said, Before young Master Han decides, no one is allowed to leave. Young Master Han, Ling Yun? Cho Zifei and the others now understood that Ling Yun had not been that man's true name, yet they were unfamiliar with the title Young Master Han. Was he called Ling Han or Han Yun? They had never heard of such a figure. Kenya, are you going to repay kindness with ingratitude and turn against us? Cho Zifei shouted sharply. We were the ones who accepted you into this circle, and this is how you repay us? What a base individual! Seng Jansen rebuked. Kanye smiled grimly. Then what must I do to avoid being called base? Let us leave, Yuan Ming hurriedly said. He believed Kanye could persuade Hu Nu. A bunch of cowards clinging abjectly to life. I am ashamed to associate with you. Kanye replied coldly, his killing intent intensifying. Kanye, everyone here are friends. Let it go. He Lan Yun stepped forward to mediate. She considered the greater picture. After all, the six of them hailed from the same place, and their respective backers were intertwined in countless ways. Right? Right! Cho Zifei nodded repeatedly. Then suddenly he struck, seizing He Lan Yun and pressing a blade against her neck. Let us go immediately, or this woman will die here. Translator Reverie, Editor, Kurisu. Such a sudden reversal of fortune. Not only was Kanye caught utterly off guard, even He Yun Lan had never anticipated it. She had stepped forward with benevolent intent to mediate, only to be seized and threatened by a companion. The change was too abrupt for her to guard against. Before she could react, she was already subdued by the other party. Kenya, this woman's heart is deeply bound to you. Are you truly willing to let her perish here? Cho Zifei tightened his right hand. The blade sliced open He Lan Yun's skin. Blood seeped out as she let out a muffled groan of pain, her eyes, nearly shaped with tears, burning with fury and regret. Ken Yi cast a cold gaze toward Seng Janseng and the other three and said, Are you all going to sink into this mire together with him? Seng Janseng and the rest offered no reply. Instead, they edged closer to Cho Zifei, guarding him from all sides, clearly leaving Kanye no opening for rescue and declaring their stance through action. Ha! Hu Qingfang burst into loud laughter. Even he had not expected such a development. The enemy of one's enemy was a friend. He said, "Everyone, come and take a seat in this young master's carriage. This young master will see to your protection." Chozi Fei and the other four were overjoyed at once. They shouted eagerly, "Make way! Let us through!" Kenyi looked at He Lan Yun's delicate face, his hand trembling ever so slightly. "What are you still hesitating for? Do you want me to strip her naked and spill a load first?" Chozi Fei roared. Hu Qingfang's eyes lit up instantly as he said, "That idea isn't bad, but this young master gets the first load. Everyone else line up." As a member of the Wind Moon sect, he felt no shame whatsoever at doing such a thing in public. On the contrary, it would only heighten his excitement. "You're inhuman," He Lan Yun finally cried out, her delicate face flushing red. She would rather die than be defiled before the man she loved. "Despicable," Qin Lianyue scolded. She knew Chozi Fei and the others were shameless, yet she never imagined it could sink to such a vile extent. "Hehe, if you can't bear to part with her, why don't you switch places with her?" Chozi Fei stared at Qin Lianyue with ravenous eyes. This woman surpassed He Lan Yun by tenfold in both figure and looks. He had long dreamed of getting close to her, but fearing her strength, he had only dared to fantasize. Now that matters had reached this point, he was willing to gamble everything. When driven to extremes, people would naturally commit acts beyond all propriety. Filthy! Shameless! Qin Lianyue and Jushuan both rebuked him in fury. He Lan Yun wished only for death to escape such humiliation. Hu Nu yawned and said in a sweet, lazy voice, "You're all so useless. Still need Lord Nu Nu to step in." "Please help." Kenye clasped his hands toward Hu Nu in salute. He had never begged anyone for aid before, but this time he chose to make an exception. "Don't you dare come closer." Chozi Fei felt an icy chill spread through his body. His lust extinguished in an instant. Hu Nu was far too terrifying. She had slain a spiritual infant-tier elite with a single punch. Even if it had been a surprise attack, it still proved her strength. Otherwise, why hadn't Chozi Fei and the others dared to kill a spiritual infant-tier expert themselves? "You say don't come over, and Nu won't? Who do you think you are? Nu's Ling Han?" Hu Nu snorted, utterly displeased. Chozi Fei hadn't even finished speaking when she transformed into a bolt of lightning and charged forward. Ping, 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 ping. Sengjian Seng and the other three were instantly blasted away, unable to withstand even a single exchange against Hu Nu. Chozi Fei clenched his teeth and roared, "If I die, I'll drag one down with me. Ha ha ha! With a beauty as company, I won't be lonely on the road." He tightened his grip, about to kill He Lan Yun. Ding. He felt his hold suddenly lighten, and to his shock discovered that the sword had been bitten clean through by Hu Nu. Damn it, this blade was forged from 6th-tier rare metal. Though it had not been refined into a spirit tool, its hardness was in no way inferior. A little monster. She. Hu Nu lifted her head, then Ping punched straight into Chozfei's left eye. "Ah!" Chozi Fei screamed miserably, staggering backward at once. He could no longer restrain He Lan Yun, clutching his eye with both hands as he writhed in unbearable pain. He Lan Yun was finally free. She immediately drew a treasured sword from her spatial ring and thrust it forward. Pooh, the sword tip pierced Chozi Fei's chest and ran straight through his heart. Chozi Fei's limbs twitched a few times before going completely still. "Pah!" He Lan Yun spat on Chozi Fei's corpse, still feeling it insufficient to vent the hatred in her heart. "Ayaya, Nu wanted to leave this bastard for Ling Han, and now he's dead." Hu Nu sighed, then quickly brightened again. Whatever. Ling Han won't mind such a small matter." Seng Jianseng and the others trembled in terror. Even if they hadn't struck directly, they had still participated in the coercion and made their stance clear. Now that the hostage was gone, what path remained for them? You die by your own hands, or should Nu do it for you? Hu Nu crossed her arms over her chest and stared coldly at the four. Seng Jianseng and the other three completely lost their will to fight. The disparity in strength was simply too great. They cried out one after another, "Young Master Hu, save us! Save us!" Qin Lianyue, Kan Ye, and the others were stunned. These four were actually shameless enough to beg Hu Qingfang for help. This truly elevated the word shameless to new heights. Hu Qingfang himself seemed taken aback. He laughed and clapped his hands. Laughable, truly laughable. But since you no longer hold a hostage, what use are you to this young master now? Seng Janseng and the other three fell into despair and looked toward Helan Yun, hoping she might plead for them. Helan Yun's face turned pale with rage. These people actually dared? She turned her head away and refused to spare them another glance. These people? I'll kill them. It's not worth dirtying Lord New's hands. Kenyi brandished his saber and charged forward, fury surging and killing intent blazing. Seng Janseng and the other three had never been a match for Kanya. Now, having lost all will to resist, they were slaughtered by him within a few moves. Woo! Helan finally cried out, throwing herself into Kanye's embrace. Kanye was clearly startled, unsure how to respond. After a brief moment of stiffness, he finally remembered to sheath his saber and wrap his arms around Helan shoulders, patting her gently as if soothing a child. Idiot! Fool! Qin Lianyue and Zhu Xuaner commented in unison. On the other side, the battle between Ling Han and Duan Mingda was drawing to a close as Ling Han unleashed the demon birth sword. Sword techniques were his greatest forte. With the treasured blade in hand, 29 flashes of qi erupted, reaching the absolute limit of qi. How could Duan Mingda possibly contend with such power? 29 flashes of sword qi! Qin Lianyue's beautiful eyes blazed as if a new world had been unveiled before her. Zhuan took everything in and could not help but sigh inwardly. Yet another person she would have to be wary of. Hu Qingfang's face turned deathly pale. He never imagined that even after recruiting a peak-stage spiritual infant tier expert, failure would still be unavoidable. He hurriedly hid inside the carriage, urging the four beautiful women to drive away at once. Whether Duan Mingda lived or died no longer mattered. Preserving his own life was paramount. Peng. A human head swept through the air and landed before the carriage, splashing spiritual infant tier blood and exuding a terrifying coercive force. Where do you think you're going? Ling Han stood there with sword in hand, killing intent surging like a tide.